Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu'alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Innal hamdalillah nahmaduhu wa nasta'inuhu wa nastaghfiruh wa na'udzu billahi min sururi anfusina wa min sayyiati a'malina may yahdihillahu fala mudhillalah wa may yudlil fala hadiyalah. Asyhadu an la ilaha illallah wa asyhadu anna sayyidana Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluhu la nabiyya ba'dah. Allahumma fassalli wa sallim mubarak ala sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man tabi'ahum bi ihsanin ila yaumiddin, amma ba'du. Hello my friends, I'm from group 1 and which has members Muhammad Reza, Anastya Zalfa, Qibtiyah Khoiru Salsabilla, Nabiilah Zalfa Renanda, and Rizkah Lutfiyah Salsabilla. And I'm standing here. I want to tell you about pesantren and the freedom of thinking. Introduction. Some researchers and scholars look at pesantren Islamic boarding school as backwards education institutions in which there is only the study of classic texts of Islamic research, like Kitab Kuning or Yellow Books, and students wear sarung, and so pesantren are for the traditionalists. The pesantren is usually led by a kiai, Muslim boarding Islamic cleric, assisted by a number of his senior santri or family members. The pesantren is an important part of the kiai lives as a medium to expand his preaching and influence through his teaching. Some observers like Martin say that the pesantren is a unique education institution that has deep roots in Indonesian tradition. As a traditional institution usually found in small villages, the pesantren is the oldest Islamic education institution in Indonesia. The pesantren, therefore, has had a great involvement in empowering Indonesian education. However, besides being an old institution of Islamic mission or da'wah, the pesantren is also well known as a conservative institution in which freedom of thinking is limited. The basic reason for this to save Muslim from a wrong understanding of Islam that leads to becoming an infidel. Because of this, some Muslim scholars proclaim to close off ijtihad, qaf bab al-ijtihad.
First material we will talk about is pesantren, its characteristic and typology. Pesantrens have an international orientation with Makkah as its central orientation. The consideration is based on the fact that some pesantrens import many classic Islamic books from Makkah and other countries in Middle East to be the main source of its teaching. Moreover, those books, called Kitab Kuning, have been accepted as legitimate source of teaching in pesantren. But modernists and reformists refuse the Kitab Kuning and prefer to directly interpret the Quran and Sunnah as the main source of Islamic knowledge. On the contrary, for traditionalists, the gateway of interpretation is closed and they can only refer religious matter to Kitab Kuning. In the pesantren system, there are several interconnected elements. The first is the kiai, the main factor through whom the pesantren system is established. Secondly, there are the santris, which are the students who learn Islamic knowledge from the kiai. The third element is the pondok, a dormitory system provided by the kiai to accommodate his students. The pondok usually consists of short rooms with one room being occupied by 5 and 10 santris. The pesantren is comprised of a housing complex which includes the houses of the kiai and his family, some pondoks, teaching buildings, and a mosque. And the fourth element of the pesantren is the lesson material, or commonly called Kitab Kuning, as mentioned above. According to Abasri, there are 3 types of pesantren. First, there is the traditional pesantren, which still maintains traditional values without prominent innovation. Second, there is the post-traditional pesantren. The method of teaching in this kind of pesantren is modern but still use kitab kuning. Third, there is the modern pesantren. The kind of pesantren has significantly changed both the education system and structure of the pesantren. Following this typology, in pesantren Salafiyah Syafi'iyah Sukorejo, Ma'had Ali has built a traditional pesantren. However, observing the several institutions found in pesantrens, this pesantren is modern. Because these pesantrens not only teach Islamic studies, but also modern science. The references which are used in this pesantren are not only kitab kuning, but also several other references, as well as other modern institutions.
Islamic view on the freedom of thinking. God revealed all religion to humans, not to animals. Why? Because humans have a mind that can interpret God's revelations. This is the advantage of humans over other creatures. The scriptures that were revealed many years ago in a certain context could not have been understood by humans without reason in that direction. How does the Quran answer and solve contemporary problems when it does not address them? The Quran was revealed to humans, which meant that God wants His words to be read, understood, and interpreted. Therefore, reason has an important position in Islam. In fact, Fakhruddin al-Razi in Mafatih al-Ghaib stated how al-Aql become the messenger of God for his creation if there is no reason, so the rules will not be regular. Intellect is the true apostle. In the methodology of Islamic jurisprudence, it nourishes that if one day there is a doctrine that is contrary to human reason, then the doctrine must be reviewed with the Tawil method. Therefore, all religious doctrine must be rational and reasonable. The Quran is guideline for its creator. The Quran does not mention all of them in detail. For example, justice must be fought for, but there is no mention of the model, the form of justice. For details, Allah fully trusts humans to interpret it. This can be seen from the statement of the Quran which repeatedly asks, "Are you stupid? Don't understand?" etc. Therefore, reason becomes a guide for revelation. In order to safeguard the meaning of the Quran, we must choose contextual interpretation. One of the reasons why we must choose contextual interpretation, because in interpreting the Quran, human has the authority to interpret it. Ali bin Abi Thalib stated that the Quran does not speak, but the reader or human does it. Therefore, the interpretation of the Quran is valid as long as it follows the rules of Hatim Ghazali and Abdul Malik.
Ma'had Ali and the atmosphere of freedom of thinking. Ma'had Ali is one of the education institutions in the Pesantren Salafiyah Syafi'iyah Suportung Situbondo, whose teaching focuses on fiqh. Santri who want to study in this institution must do exercise till they are considered qualified and reliable to study in the institution. Fiqh is one of the branches of Islamic science. Its study encompasses all practical dimensions of Islam, including how to pray well, fast, go on pilgrimage, trade, be in debt, have a good attitude to others, etc. Ma'had Ali uses fiqh as the central aim and approach to face any problem in society. In Ma'had Ali, fiqh reference books are not trapped in one of school of thought. Mahat Ali provides some new reference texts, and these are not only limited to Islamic books. In its library, there are many books related to other sciences like philosophy, sociology, and anthropology. In 2002, Mahat Ali was legalized by the Ministry of Religious Affairs as having an equal degree status with the master program in a university. Students who graduate from this institution get an MHI, Master Hukum Islam or Masters in Islamic Law. This equality establishes Mahat Ali as a modern education institution operating within a traditional pesantren. Curriculum. The education implemented at Mahat Ali is based on a curriculum which is compatible with the program of Fiqh Usul Fiqh. The core courses are based on books, which are usually read by a lecturer of Mahat Ali, or books which have to be referenced by the student in the writing of a paper as outlined in class discussions for core or secondary courses. Those books can be classified depending on the subject of knowledge. First, Fiqh. Second, Usul al-Fiqh. Third, Qawaid al-Fiqh. Fourth, Ulum al-Tafsir, Tafsir Ahkam, and Ulum al-Quran. Fifth, Hadith, Ulum al-Hadith, and Hadith Ahkam. Sixth, Ethics and Islamic Mysticism. 7. Belief or Akidah. 8. History or Tarikh.
Next, method of teaching. The method of teaching in Mahat Ali starts from the basic ability to carry out the duties of scholarship, education, guidance, and elucidation in Muslim society for the purpose of mastering academic ability or tafaqquh fi din and professional ability or takhassus in the plural society. There are several methods of teaching in Mahat Ali. The first method is speech and dialogue. In this method, the lecturer gives his main thought depending on the syllabus, and then there is a dialogue between student and lecturer. And the second method is tadris wa ta'lim. This method is used for manuscript studies. All students regularly read paragraphs of the kitab, and the lecturer gives the meaning and explanation of the text read. Third, a method of giving an assignment individually or collectively. In this method, students must write a paper on them chosen by the lecturer. This paper then is discussed in the class without the facilitation of the lecturer. And the last method is muhadarah amma or studium general. This method is usually given by a mashayikh on a certain topic. In this method, it is not only followed by the student of Mahat Ali, but also the lecturer of Institute of Islamic Studies of Ibrahimi and regular lecturer of Mahat Ali. Besides that, the students have extracurricular study outside the class. There are three kinds. The first, mudhakara or discussion on Fathul Wahab, Fiqh, and Jam'ul Jawami, Kitab of Usul Fiqh. Although this is extracurricular, all students are expected to join. In the daily discussion, students are divided into two classes that are facilitated by an assistant lecturer. Second, discussion about fiqh on contemporary problems, which is called Masail Fiqhiyah. The contemporary problems relating to the fiqh usually come from outside the pesantren, such as the branch of NU, Situbondo, PWNU, East Java, RMI, Robito Mahid Islamia, or even PBNU. And the last extracurricular is a study club, which is formed independently by students. In the study club, students have the freedom to discuss everything. There are at least two kinds of study club. Fokus kajian usufik or course focus, and pusat studi agama dan filsafat or pusfa. The method of teaching in Ma'had Ali liberates the student to discuss everything, showing that there is no single understanding on Islam because of different interpretation. It proves that students of Ma'had Ali are experiencing freedom of thinking that differs from other pesantrens, which usually give limits to think. And next, Bulletin of Tanwirul Afkar. Tanwirul Afkar, or TA, is a weekly bulletin published by Safitri of Ma'had Ali that contains elaboration of fiqh interacting with religious and social problems. Every week, TA presents an actual problem and proposes fiqh as an approach to resolving the problem. Several themes published in TA are: first, interfaith marriage is no problem. Even though in classical texts the prohibition of interfaith marriage is found, Ma'had Ali has a different interpretation. There is usually a Muslim may get married to non-Muslim. They cite some opinions from contemporary ulama like Yusuf Qaradawi. The prohibition of interfaith marriage for Ma'had Ali is a product of a certain history. For our time, Muslims can get married to people from other religions without hesitation because other religions have the same goal. And second dance is non-Muslim as the Indonesian president. Ma'had Ali contends that the prohibition for non-Muslim president is only for an Islamic countries. Indonesia is not an Islamic country. The president only manages and focuses on secular matters. If being Muslim becomes a requirement of leader, it will negate and discriminate against other religions. Without hesitation, TA asserts that it is not impossible for a non-Muslim to be president. And third dance is Jesus or Christianity and Muhammad Islam in dialogue. The relationship between Islam and Christianity should be continuously maintained in a tone of peacefulness. There is no reason to see them as essentially different. Both of them are the same in either of a theological or historical perspective. Such explanations are never found in classic texts. However, Santri Ma'had Ali does not only deconstruct the traditional view of fiqh, but also tries to create a new one. And the last dance is woman as leader. Ma'had Ali proposed to see the nature of woman in a new perspective. Indeed, Islam is caring religion for women. The emergence of Islam deconstructs the oppressive structure by positioning women as equal to men. However, the struggle of Islam to advocate for women is a gradual action. For this reason, we are reminded that the gift of Islam to women in a certain context by a Certain contexts must be interpreted as a process to make men and women equal.
And concluding remarks, moreover, Ma'had Ali focus on the methodology of fiqh or usul fiqh rather than its productive fiqh, giving the space to think liberally based on the local situation. In usul fiqh, reason al-aql has a special position for interpreting the scope of law, Al-Quran and Hadith. Contextualize and change to previous laws codified by modern Muslim scholars. Furthermore, teacher, ustad, or kiai in Ma'had Ali also have a liberal understanding of Islam, different from liberal Muslim activists who have no deep roots in Islamic studies. It's important to further make some notes. Firstly, we have to recognize the complexity of problems which cannot be solved by one perspective or approach. Usul al-fiqh or fiqh is on perspective in approaching social problems. There are numerous approaches which are important to know by santris in order to sound the Islamic law in society. Secondly, Ma'had Ali is well known as a liberal institution. As we see in its bulletin, the interpretation of the text by Ma'had Ali is no longer literal, but contextual and based on the concept of maslahah. Thirdly, the problem of Ma'had Ali, how to promote is taught to other pesantrens because the leader of the pesantren is the kiai who has great power.